Today on this episode of the People You Should Know podcast.
Well, yeah, and that's the dangerous part for you and me is that we're both pretty big dreamers. The difference is how we then think about those dreams
Right.
because I just kind of stay at 30,000 feet, be like, this is going to be awesome. We're going to, and I'm not thinking about editing clips. I'm not thinking about, all the different levels of graphics that need to be created. I'm not really thinking about those things. My eyes down the road.
Right.
And so when you started talking about, okay, we're going to need to do this, and I'm doing this, and these are all the things that I'm working on every week for the podcast. I mean, my head just about exploded because I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even consider all those things.
Welcome to the People You Should Know podcast, telling the stories of people you should know and allowing their greatness to inspire everyday people. And now, here are your weekly hosts, Danny Ferry and David Farwell.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the People You Should Know podcast. So for today's episode, we just wanted to take a few minutes and stop and really just talk about some of the things that we have learned very early on as we've been trying to produce a weekly podcast for you. We're going to talk about things we think that we've done extremely well, but we're also going to talk about things that we think we need to improve upon. And I think this is going to be a really valuable episode for you, our audience, because we're going to tell all, right? We're not going to hide anything. We're going to tell you everything about the thoughts that were going into our mind when we started this podcast, which obviously for anybody who hasn't listened to the pre-launch episode, it is there. It is available. Take a listen to it. We really bear all in that, but we'll talk a little bit about that today and talk about what we were trying to do when we started, and then how actually going about and doing the podcast and learning things has caused us to maybe shift our mindset a little bit. So we really want to help you. This is what's important. If you're somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast, we really want to help you to skip some of the mistakes that we've made early on and really just be able to fast track yourself into making an awesome podcast, having the right mindset around it, and really being able to connect with people that you want to connect with without maybe some of the extra stuff that we've put into it.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and as we go into this, I think that one of the things to just to know right off the bat, it doesn't really matter what style of podcast you're launching. If it's not an interview style podcast, I think that some of the principles we're going to be talking about today are really transferable to not just any level of podcast, but really starting any project that you might have in your heart or mind to do. And so we're just really glad that you're listening today. Please tune in and let the lessons we've learned, both successes and struggles, be a catalyst for your project today.
So really just to start off the podcast today, Dave, I just want to revisit really quick when we first started this and we're talking about starting this. I want to talk a little bit about some of the hopes and dreams that we had. And even before we talk about that, listen, we didn't go into this with like rose-colored glasses by any stretch of the imagination. So for those of you who don't know, who maybe haven't visited the website, heydouyouknow.com, at the very bottom, Dave and I have like these real short snippets of kind of who we are, why we wanted to do this, and why we think we can help people who maybe struggle with networking, people that maybe have an idea but are afraid, or that haven't been able to really get launched out because they don't have the encouragement to do that. And here's the thing, Dave has helped multiple companies, 2 companies, reach their first $1 million in sales. That's like a tremendous feat. Dave has 28 years of ministry experience, and then he also has marketing experience, and he's helped entrepreneurs. He's his own entrepreneur. He's helped startups. So he's experienced. He's been there. He's seen success. And for myself, when I was thinking about this, when I was kind of writing some of the script for this, I was like, how do I say this without bragging? You know what I mean? Like, how do you talk about yourself without bragging? Like, I've been blessed. I started a company in 2019, and we have now reached to a point where we are a 6-figure business. And obviously, to reach that point, you have to do things right. It's not about me bragging on myself. You have to do some things that are right. You have to serve customers. And for me as a person of faith, I just feel tremendously blessed. I've gone and I've really covered my business in prayer, and I do it continually. So that's something that's important for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about, starting a podcast, as two people that have been successful in other ventures, right? We thought, hey, let's do a podcast. And I want to talk about some of the reasons we wanted to do it. So Dave, maybe you could just share a little bit about some of the reasons we wanted to start this podcast and kind of how it all came together. And then we'll talk again, and then we'll get into some of the do's and don'ts from what we've learned from trying to do this.
Well, sure. And I think that it really boils down to just having some experiences several months ago for both of us where we recognize at a higher level the power of connection, the power of networking. And some of that was me watching you and your interactions the last time that I was in the area.
Mm-hmm.
But also just an incredible eye-opening experience I had of traveling across the U.S. this past summer, and meeting some just truly incredible people and thinking about, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if these people actually knew some of the other people that I knew?
Right.
And what could happen if those two people were to get connected and be able to actually multiply their influence, in their respective industries. And so just having that kind of unlock, and then, I'd love for you to share from your side, because these things were kind of happening simultaneously.
Right.
And so then to come together and be like, man, wait a minute, we got something powerful happening here. And what would be the best format, the best platform to actually take this and let it be something valuable to as many people as possible?
Yeah. So as you were experiencing a lot of that stuff, you and I are in communication, right? Just kind of talking about what's happening ministry wise for you. We keep up, we keep up to date with one another as to like how things are going. On my side of things, I've really pushed into this networking space where I meet with people pretty regularly. It's not always clientele, but it's just people in the community.
Right.
And really have learned to put this great value on relationships with people, realizing that as I'm having these relationships with people, they are unlocking things in me that are allowing me to grow my potential and to become the fullness of who I feel like I was meant to be. And so I had 3 separate experiences with people that really walked into a room, had a meeting set up with them, and somebody else walked into the room while I was meeting with them. And each time the person said, you two need to know each other. And I just thought to myself while that was happening, how many people can we connect with others that they need to know? And so that's really how the podcast came together, right? And then I'm texting you and I'm like, dude, I have this awesome idea. We were throwing some names around. I'm like, people you should know podcast. And if anybody who's ever, well, Dave, you really have only been one of the few people to take the brunt of this outside of my wife. But when I have an idea and I feel like this is like I'm pretty much set. Like if I have an idea and I just feel almost like a confirmation that I need to go with it, I'm like a fire hose, right? Like you're getting 600 text messages in 10 minutes and you're not even sure how to process all of it. And it's just me getting everything out of myself so that it's like down on paper. And so anyway, I'm sending all these, and eventually after a little bit of conversation, we land on the People You Should Know podcast. And this isn't about a popularity contest. This is about connecting you with people that we think you should know. And in the meantime, we like to talk to people, hear their stories, hear about their journey, and we like to let them know, or we really want them to tell their stories, because almost every story, and really the first 6 episodes back this up. In every story, there's a moment or something that happens where it's not just all sunshine and rainbows the entire time. There's a problem that happens, a failure that occurs, and in that moment, people have a choice to make, right? It's either
Absolutely.
stop or go.
Right.
And so, like we want to share those stories, but we want to inspire you. And so as I was thinking about this, we often say we want to inspire people to greatness. We want to help you to get to a point where you unlock your greatest potential. But as I was thinking about today, the number one thing that I think, another way to say this, I'm not going to say the number one thing. Another way to say this is we want to inspire you to overcome the fear of failure. We want you to take the next step and keep pushing, because behind that failure or behind something that doesn't go the way you want it could be your next great breakthrough and could open you up to accessing your greatest potential.
Wow, well said. And fear of failure is not your thing. If that's not what it is, there is something. There is
Yeah.
something. And I've said this multiple times, Danny. I don't even know if I've even told you, but I've said this multiple times to people about this podcast. Really, it's about helping people to understand the things that are in their way, help them to get those things out of the way, or even to get out of their own way, so that they can truly walk into a higher level of understanding and greatness that they're intended for with whatever it is that they're doing in life. And I love with every person that we have interviewed so far, that's been a part of their story at one point or another during the episode, is just them coming to this understanding that, wait a minute, here's my wall. I can either stay here and just stop here, or I can figure out how to overcome or to break down what's in front of me so I can go into something even better or greater. And I love that about everyone.
You want to know something that's been awesome? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I really want to make this point, because you're going to be like amen in this, because I think it's true. Almost every time somebody talks about their failure or something that they come up against, almost every time it's not a new thing, a new tool. It's a person that helps them to overcome that and to take the next step.
Ironic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is ironic, and it also should, for anybody listening, it should put up like alarm bells. Like, if you're not in relationship with other like-minded people, and really, let's go back to the episode with Josh Hall. If you haven't listened to the episode with Josh Hall, one of the key moments in that episode for me, I'm actually going to talk about a little bit later, is him saying, your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you're not seeing the type of people around you that you want to see around you, more than likely it's the vibe that you're putting off. And if you don't have a group of people around you, it's because you're really not inviting them to be around you.
Ooh, Danny's on fire. All right, here we go.
All right, man. Well, let's get into some do's and don'ts today, because we really want to help all of you listeners to know what we would say. Absolutely invest your time in. If you're going to start a podcast, if you're going to start connecting with people via a platform like this, these are the things we would say you should definitely do. And so, Dave, I'm actually going to let you go first here, and just start with your first thing that you would absolutely say that people should do. Hey guys, I really hope that you are enjoying this episode of the People You Should Know podcast. We want to just take a quick break to talk about one of our sponsors, Empowered Creative. In a world where there is so much competition online, being able to connect with your visitors has never been more important. Empowered Creative is very passionate about empowering businesses by creating conversion-based websites that connect with visitors. With their SEO strategy, they help people find your business. With their websites, they take people on a journey to connect with your products. And with their online video marketing, they create a positive reputation that puts your business over the top. So if you know a small business that's looking to stand above the competition, tell them it's time to be stronger and more confident. Tell them it's time to be empowered. You can visit Empowered Creative to find out more information at empoweredcreative.co. Now, let's get back to today's interview.
Well, I don't know that I would have said this several weeks ago, but one of the things that has surfaced for me as we've gone through this is just recognizing the power or the art of asking great questions. I think this is such an essential aspect of running a truly great podcast. Don't just become a student of communication. Try to avoid some of those get popular fast things that are out there on social media with your podcasts and growing your audience and stuff. Really take a step back and and find yourself learning and mastering some of the more simple things. And I don't really know that there's anything more foundational about communication with another person than really helping them to know I'm listening. I'm
Yeah.
listening so well that I know the right question to ask because I'm not just waiting to speak. I'm waiting to hear and understand so that I can ask you the right question that's going to draw even better information out of the person that you're interviewing.
Yeah, and if anybody remembers, Dave, you remember the interview with Hans Skilrud.
I do.
I think it was episode 3, if I'm correct. We talked about, in particular, when you're talking. He was talking about when you're talking with clients, right, or just people in general. But we were talking specifically about clients, like listening, and how if you have the skill of listening, and it was one of his, like he said, it was a pet peeve of his, like when people
Yep.
don't listen well, which really made me laugh. But like literally, people will tell you the answer to the question that you're asking, or in a client meeting, they'll tell you what solution they're looking for and let you know how you can provide that solution for them. And it's the same thing in a podcast episode. I want to relate it, to a podcast episode. As you're listening to people and they're saying things, you are going to hear things. There are going to be things that literally pique your interest as a host, and it's going to almost inform you, like, we got to press into this a little bit more because you want to know a little bit more about that.
That's good. Just this phrase came to mind as you were just wrapping that up. I'm thinking, you know what? If we could put this, and this is just this is like the pastor in me coming out, but all of a sudden I just heard this phrase, right? Like, listen to learn instead of just waiting for your turn. And I really think that's it, man. I even we even drive this home with our kids as they're growing, of just becoming great listeners. It really will take, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but especially in your podcast, it will take you far to value that over the content that you're trying to get out there.
I completely agree. And honestly, your point lends me to one of my points, which I'll talk about, which is be genuinely curious. This is number 2 on the do's list. Be genuinely curious. So, right, you can ask really great questions, but people can tell if you just could not give a rip about the answer, right? But when you're actually engaged in the conversation, and you're genuinely curious, like, that takes you to another level. And one of the people that I really follow a lot that I respect is Pat Flynn, and he actually has a podcast tutorial about asking questions, right? And he has these 4 different things. But one of the things he says is, before you use any of these, like, be genuinely curious. So that lends itself, Dave, and I would just love to ask to, like, get your thoughts on this. Do you think that being genuinely curious almost lends you to a place where you can't do a podcast if you're not actually interested in the topic? Like you couldn't just start a podcast, right? Because right now it's a fad to start a podcast, right? It's like the thing to do to be a content creator. But if you're just creating a podcast for that reason, and you're like, well, I think this will be a good topic that I can make money with, or something like that, but you're not genuinely interested, you're doomed to fail right away.
I fully agree. I mean, look, all of us know, you can think back even probably over the last several months of your life, and all of us can point out that you were in a conversation with somebody, and man, was that conversation uninteresting. I mean, you just knew that you were in a conversation with someone who's just talking to be impressive, or they're
Right.
talking just to show that they are knowledgeable about something. Man, it's such a good point, Danny, that if you're not curious about your own topic,
Yeah.
find another one. Really, please do find another one, because there's so many things in the world, and I guarantee that every one of you who's listening, you're passionate about something.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something that when someone brings up a topic, it ignites your curiosity. I would even say this. I would not consider myself to be an expert in networking, but I have a passion for it because I see what it does for people. And so don't get caught up in trying to be an expert in something when you podcast. Let it be something that ignites your curiosity and sends you out there to learn more and to be somebody who develops as you go. Quite honestly, I would be way more interested in listening to somebody who is speaking from a place of passion and curiosity than a place of knowledge or expertise.
Yeah, that is so good. Like I love that so much. I think that's why I'm in the business I'm in, right? So I'm in the business of digital marketing, but one of the things about digital marketing is that it is such an expansive industry, right? I could probably spend the rest of my life learning about it and never learn everything, but I have a passion for it. And so every day it sends me out to learn more, to be better, to learn more. And the same thing with meeting like-minded people. I think that's one of the big things that I'm super passionate about. And so every time we've done a podcast episode, we've been able to attract people, right? This is our vibe, attracting our tribe. We've been able to attract people to come onto the show because they're like-minded. And when you're interviewing like-minded people, you're interviewing people with similar passions. Oh my goodness. Like it makes it so much more meaningful. And at the end of the day, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, even if nobody who's listening, and this may sound selfish, we've grown tremendously through 6 episodes of this podcast, and it's been pretty crazy. So,
Yeah.
Dave, the second thing that I definitely want to point out is less of a what I would call philosophical do,
Sure.
and more of just a very practical, technical do, and that is to focus on audio first. So if anybody, like me and Dave were just having this conversation, Dave, I'm going to put you out there, man. Sorry. If you listen to episode number 6, there's a couple points in the episode where Dave sounds like he's talking inside of like a trash bag or something. Exactly. And where I'm editing the episode and I'm hearing it and there's nothing I can do. Like, I mean, there's just absolutely
It was this bad. Yeah.
I can't bring it back. There's nothing I can do. But we're working on it, right? Like if you're starting out, I just want to say this. If you're starting out and you have a low budget, you start with what you have. But the first moment that you have an opportunity that you can focus on improving something for your podcast, make it be audio first. Because here's the thing. If your audio is terrible, people are going to turn you off right away, even if you're on YouTube. You go out and you spend $3,000 on the top of the line camera, you're looking sharp. People can see the beads of sweat on your forehead, but your audio is terrible. They're turning you off. The visual part of that does not matter and the reason for this is because even people who want to watch something in show form, a lot of time, or they don't necessarily want to watch it on show form, but if they find you on YouTube, a lot of times they'll turn you on and then they'll start doing something else. So
very true. Yep.
Audio is absolutely one of the most important components. And even Dave, we can talk about this a little bit, but like some of the episodes already where our guests have had bad audio and it's been like, oh man, like I'm not sure how this is going to go.
Sure. I mean, that's definitely been the case, whether it's on our end,
right?
Specifically my end. I'll throw myself under the bus. It's one of those things where, early on, I remember us having conversations, and before we even recorded one episode, Danny, you were going, okay, I think I need to get A, B, C, and D. And you had a list of things, right? And out of that list, I would say 4 out of the 5 had to do with audio quality. And I just remember thinking about that and thinking like, so smart. And I was okay with what I had because I thought that it would be sufficient. But as we continued to move forward, I realized, wow, this isn't going to be something that's going to move us forward. What got us here is not necessarily going to get us there. And I think that your point that you're making for people who are listening is that, please, by all means, like don't even have a video aspect to your podcast if you can't do that well. Just go ahead and start with having, a great audio. I'll share just a quick story that I have a couple of people that I absolutely love listening to. I never, ever, ever get tired of listening to them. One of them is Miles Monroe. And I just absolutely love pretty much everything the man teaches. However, on a recent episode, there was this problem with his microphone, and the problem persisted for more than 2 minutes, right?
Mm,
I have never returned to that episode. I have no idea what he teaches after that. It could be the most valuable gem in the world that he taught, but I haven't heard it because I got turned off
right.
by a bad audio experience.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would definitely say to anybody who wants to start a podcast is first, make sure that you focus on audio first. Like if you're going to upgrade something, make it be audio. Number two, this is something Dave and I do with every one of our podcast guests is we actually send them somewhere and have them schedule out their podcasts and everything, but we let them know like what the minimum audio requirements are to be on the show. And starting out, we needed to figure that out a little bit. It wasn't perfect, but now we've really nailed it down. So if somebody's going to come on the show, we require at least a minimum for audio, or, we'll kind of say, hey, we need to reschedule until you can get your audio up to this point. So,
Right.
but yeah, audio is huge. And the final thing that I wanted to say here isn't written down anywhere on my notes, but I just think it's super important. And Dave, we can chat about this. It's just be consistent. Like if you've made a commitment to put out podcast episodes, and we can really talk about this, Dave, because it's been one of our struggles, because not only are we doing a podcast, but we also both have businesses we're running and projects we're working on and so many other things. But being consistent or setting up things to allow you to be consistent in your podcast creation. So for me, well, first, Dave, let me ask you what your thoughts are on that, and I can kind of talk about some of the things that I've experienced as we've gone through this.
Well, maybe.
Do we need to go to the don't section?
It's going to be a great segue. And just the reality is, I mean, this has been a topic of thought for me, even over the last 24 to 36 hours. Just like we said, we're going to kind of bear all. Danny and I, we had some conflict over some things that were expected, some things that I had accepted responsibility for getting done, and man, I was just not getting to them. And it's been a traditional thing for me. I've struggled at times in my past much greater than I do now, but I find myself falling into the trap of overcommitment pretty regularly. And so one of the things that has really surfaced in my thoughts, this is probably one of my greatest growth points over the last few years, is really taking the things that occur and just slowing down. For me, it's spending time with God, paying attention to the voice of His Spirit, and letting the challenges that I face in a day become lessons instead of frustrations. And so learning through that, with some guidance, even reviewing the conversations that Danny and I had, one of the things that I realized was it came down to a very, very simple decision. And it was just a decision. It
Right.
was deciding what's going to take priority. What are the things that need to take the greatest priority? And after really thinking about that, do I actually have the time to do this? Because I think that one of the things that I'll just say this, and then I'm gonna shut up. But
No worries, man.
it, um, when you decide to do a podcast, it's really not about you.
You're right.
And it's hard to get over that thought process, but it really is about the people that you're serving. The reality is that this world is built um, to promote self seekers, but the world works on a different principle, and that principle is that whoever serves the most wins.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. And if you can't decide that you're going to make your podcast a priority because you're actually serving the people that listen to you, then you need to make a different decision. Either wait to start it or just set the project down. Because I think we got to remember that we owe something to those that choose to listen to us, and that's to really bring not only a great voice and um, you know, great content,
Mm-hmm.
but also great consistency.
Yeah, I think that is really important. I remember one time, one of our guests, Josh Hall, episode 4, I believe. I was listening to one of his podcasts, and he was actually talking about the early days. He was doing some course building. He was building courses, and when you launch something new, and you feel and you're looking at the analytics and you're looking at the numbers, and he would see like 1 or 2 or not like the hundreds of thousands or the hundreds or the thousands of followers or purchases
Right.
or whatever. He said, I really had to sit there and remind myself to remember that is a person and I'm serving them. And so and I need to, and I don't need to worry about, I can't serve 1,000 people well if I can't even serve 1 or 2 well. And I just thought it was like such a important, I took that and I applied that. I've applied that to my business, but I've just tried to apply that to everything I do, from a business standpoint or from a podcast standpoint. I think it's really important, and I don't always do it perfectly. And one of the reasons I don't do that perfectly, I'm going to actually move us right into the don't section right here. One of the reasons that that consistency can be a struggle and we don't do it well is because we try to do everything all at once. And so for me, that's one of my first don'ts, right? So when you start a podcast, you have to think about, you have to edit a podcast. You have to, you try to, in today's day and age of social media, you're trying to extract clips from it. You're trying to get everything posted on at least five social media platforms. Dave, I think we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. So that's 5, right? And each one requires a different piece of the puzzle, right? Some of them require a 60-second reel. Other ones require an image that's a 1-by-1 image. YouTube is actually a social media platform. They require a different type of image. And so at the very beginning of all this, one of the reasons that I really struggled with consistency and really became and dealt with overwhelm is because I was like, we're going to do this podcast. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to do everything. And the simple truth of the matter is I had to kind of retract into my shell and really just become realistic about it and come to the decision that I couldn't do everything. And that if we were going to do more, that I needed help to do that. And so ultimately, and if you listen to the podcast episode with Josh Hall, Dave and I had a conversation before one of our episodes. And I was like, I need to hire somebody. I need to hire somebody to take care of this. And so I've now hired somebody, which has been awesome. But when you try to do everything all at once and you don't actually have the time for it, you're just setting yourself up to be really inconsistent. And it's better to be consistent, put out, like Dave said, just audio, just put out the audio file on Spotify. Don't worry about maybe editing the video that you put on YouTube at the beginning. And then as you grow or as you have an opportunity to get more people to help you, or you have more time or something occurs, begin to make your product better. But for the time being, really focus on your audio and then just doing the things that you can do every week consistently. Dave, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's so important, and it's so ironic, honestly, for me to hear you talking about this because out of all the people I know in my life, you're easily in the top 5 of people who are consistent, diligent. These are really words that mark who you are and what really makes your company. There's other things as well. You're a
Right.
great web designer, great content creator, but you're also incredibly diligent. And so to hear you talking about this is kind of shocking. But I do think as well that, the cousin to this whole thing is really that I kind of alluded to this before, that we have this like irresistible draw to complexity. It's like, doing everything at once, just like you were talking about, Danny. I fully agree. And I don't know that, as much as you, it was one of those things.
You can make fun of me.
I,
It's okay, man.
oh,
I'm
no,
a
no.
bit, when I dream, it's big. I know.
Well, yeah, and that's the dangerous part for you and me is that we're both pretty big dreamers. The difference is how we then think about those dreams
Right.
because I just kind of stay at 30,000 feet, be like, this is gonna be awesome. We're gonna, and I'm not thinking about editing clips. I'm not thinking about, all the different levels of graphics that need to be created. I'm not really thinking about those things. My eyes down the road.
Right.
And so when you started talking about, okay, we're going to need to do this and this, and I'm doing this, and these are all the things that I'm working on every week for the podcast. I mean, my head just about exploded because I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even consider all those things. And this is why, I mean, either look, Danny and I know this about each other. Either we're
Yeah.
going to work really well together or we're going to kill each other. It's one of the
Yeah,
two.
exactly.
And we've had both. And,
Yep.
it's been something that's really galvanized our friendship.
Mm-hmm.
But so I would say that, and this is the thing I alluded to earlier. If you can remember one thing when it comes to this idea of just not doing everything at once, avoiding that allure of complexity, um, adopt a principle where you choose to grow with your podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that's really how we can just bottom line this particular topic is just to say, be willing to grow with it. You are not going to offend anybody by growing with your podcast. But you probably will lose faithful listeners if you're not consistent, if you
Yes.
allow trying to do everything at once get in the way of the things that are truly most important. So, yeah, man, I fully agree. And I think that really is probably the best bottom line we could give to this topic.
Yeah. I was thinking about, so far we put out 6 episodes. We've missed 1 week since we started. And I remember
Right.
I was on vacation that week. We were actually working on the Axe Token website, trying to get that finished for public launch. And I just remember, and I don't know if you've ever had this, Dave, but I think it'd be, when you know that you have this principle in your mind, right, of be consistent. Like I've heard from people before about consistency, maybe not about a podcast, but just in life in general. It's something I do strive for. I try to be consistent. My wife knows what to expect from me, like on a day-to-day basis. I know what to expect from her. But just like being consistent. And then during that week, right, I'm on vacation. I'm supposed to be just relaxing, chilling. I'm at the lake, having a good time, out fishing in a kayak. And all I can think about is we didn't put a podcast episode out this week. I broke the chain. What is wrong with me? You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just going to kill the podcast. And anyway, it's just interesting, it's one of the things, and one of the reasons that happened, like if we're going to bear all, let's bear all, is because we tried to get too complex and right off the bat.
Yeah.
And we just realized, hey, let's just do the things that we're good at. And then as we have the opportunity, let's grow this and make this, let's do the things we're dreaming about systematically, and step by step, let's kind of implement those things as we kind of perfect doing the other things first. So yeah, man.
Very well said. Yeah.
So one of the other things that I would love to talk about in the don't section is don't expect immediate results. So we've had a little bit of a mixed bag in this. Dave, I know that obviously I do a lot of like the posting and I have the access to the analytics and stuff. So week 1, okay, I just need to talk about this.
Yeah, let's bear it all, man.
Week 1, okay, we're pumped. We get this episode out. Aaron Anderson's on. Aaron Anderson set the stage, honest to God, for the entire podcast.
For sure.
I love that episode. That was episode 1 for those of you who maybe didn't listen to it. And he said, and anyway, the episode releases, and obviously we're pumped. We released a podcast episode, right? Like, holy cow, we did it! There's something out there. Our name's on it. This thing that we've created. And in my mind, I thought to myself, like a personal goal or something. I was like, if we have 50 people listen, that would be awesome. Dave, did you have any type of thought in your mind?
My expectations were lower, but I still had them. I go like, man, I'm going to be happy if 20 people listen.
All right.
Yeah.
No, that's fine, because like we didn't really discuss it. Like me and you didn't discuss it, but we each had something in our head. So I was thinking, if 50 people listen to this, like, sweet. And I just figured, right, my family's like half of York County, so I can at least draw 50 family members, right? But here's we'll talk about that later. Anyway, I get on the analytics, and on day one, I noticed we have like 104 views, and I'm thinking, wow, like we doubled what I thought. This is awesome. And so I literally shut down the app and I don't look at it. Our podcast released on Thursday. Sunday, we're sitting around the pool at my mother-in-law's, and we're just kind of chilling. And I thought, you know what? Let me see what the analytics look like. Let me see what we're looking at. So I bring up the app on my phone, and all of a sudden the number says like 1,100 views, and I'm like, what just happened? Like I'm completely shocked. How did we get 1,100 views? And so I thought, well, it's Sunday. We probably have plateaued, and that's probably like the most, but like, holy cow, that's 20 times what I expected. And we must have done something right, is what I was thinking, like something about this. So later on, like, long story short, we are now, like, if you look at that episode, it is still our most watched episode with over 2,400 views. And when we look at that episode, we're thinking to ourselves, like, that's the benchmark, right? 2,400 views or bust. You know what I mean? Because we've had this like immediate, like, awesome result. So then we released our second episode, and that number is around 500 viewers. And even to this, like, that's what it's at today. And then we released the next couple, and all of a sudden, like, we have this downward trend. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what's going on? Like, what happened? And I think the moral of the story is, like, don't expect immediate results. There are algorithms out there on these platforms that when you put out a podcast episode for the first time, they push them out. They put them in front of people, and people will click on them and they'll listen to them. But you got to have some time to actually find your benchmark number and to actually begin to steadily climb and to figure out and actually see that like a realistic trajectory of number of views. And then you can really begin to do some things to maybe try to improve your podcast to get better. But I think going into it, like, unfortunately, because we had such an awesome week one, right?
Right.
And we didn't recognize that these different algorithms really push them out. Like, specifically, Amazon pushed our podcast out, and it was viewed. The majority of our views or our streams and listens came from Amazon, from like Alexa.
Yep. Crazy.
Which was awesome. But in all honesty, like, that was an outlier. That episode is legitimately an outlier. And so for the next few episodes, we've had to look at the analytics and kind of look at and see what's working and what's working and what's not working. But at the end of the day, we've kind of had to temper our expectations and just say, okay, here's a good benchmark, and then begin to pursue realistic goals. So Dave, I know you haven't actually had a chance to look at all those numbers, but maybe you can just talk a little bit about like some experiences you've had in the numbers game, even if it's social media related. It's very similar.
It is, and those numbers, I mean, It's good and it's exciting, and sometimes they're just a plain curse,
Yeah.
because you find yourself chasing the numbers instead of having legitimate metrics that you're really chasing after. And man, I'll tell you what, that's I mean, sure, who doesn't want immediate results, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we all
absolutely.
want
Yeah.
that, and there's nothing wrong with wanting that. So we're not coming down on anyone who kind of has that wish in their heart that like they put something out there, and hey, may that be true for you.
Yes.
The thing that you put out there is just immediately successful. We want that for you. Um, but if it's not, likely it's not going to be. That's the more consistent story. Um, then may the things that we're learning real time
Hmm.
as we go through this be encouragement to you to just you know and this was one of the things I had written down. Just kind of watch your wishes.
Right.
Keep your eye on them. Don't let yourself get disappointed if if the numbers or the things that you're hoping for don't happen immediately. Sometimes I've learned this in other arenas, especially over this time. I'm currently working as the marketing director for a new cryptocurrency, and we had a very slow start. Um, and everyone says, hey, look, in the crypto world, if you don't make it in the first 90 days, you're not going to make it. And I mean that phrasing is out there everywhere.
Right.
Well, our first 90 days they sucked. I mean, they're just not
Right.
good at all. But the difference was, and you mentioned this, Danny. I think that maybe it's not on my list either, but I'm realizing this is probably really important to talk about when we come up against those times where we're at that place of disappointment. Uh, there's really one decision, one item that separates people from just going to a place where they essentially just eventually put that project down,
Right.
or they innovate. They look at what they're doing, they make it better. They're constantly looking. And we, in talking to the co-founders of Axe Token, just in our most recent episode 6,
Episode 6. Yeah.
yeah, we really talked about that idea of creating the foolproof offer. But that's really a process. You don't usually come out of the gate with the best offer ever, because taking some of the things we've even talked about already, like being curious, listening really well,
Hmm.
listening to your clients, and learning how to make what you do better. If you'll be committed, instead of being committed to success, if you'll
Right.
be committed to improvement, then you will be successful. Then there's just absolutely no way. The only way that you lose is if you stop. And so I would just encourage all of you who are listening today, or whenever you listen, the reality is that we could do a much better job at changing. It's not lowering our standards. It's just saying, no, I'm going to be more committed to improvement than I am going to be to the allure of success. And I'm going to make sure that I'm watching my wishes. I'm kind of putting some guardrails on the results that I'm expecting, so that I'm allowing the journey that I'm on with your podcast or whatever project you're
Hmm.
working on to be the teacher, and to help you to become better and better. If you'll stick with it, eventually you'll have a great podcast. You'll have a great product. You'll have a great business, whatever it is that you're working on. If we change the things that we pursue and we put some guardrails on our expectations, great things will eventually come.
Yeah. I think it's funny. It's the final thing on my don't list, which is don't be afraid to experiment. Right.
Hmm.
And what I think about when I think about this, Dave, how many podcasts do you listen to that you started listening from episode 1 and just faithfully have started and followed throughout? Probably not too many, right?
Zero.
Exactly. The podcasts that I listen to, I've probably picked up listening to them around episode 200 or later, if I'm being completely honest. There's one podcast that I started listening to right away, which was the Josh Hall website design podcast, and it's because of my career and because I was already a part of his community. But but I listen to other podcasts, and I'm jumping in like episode 200, which, let me tell you, if you go back to some of your favorite podcasts that you like to listen to right now, go on to Spotify, go the whole way back to episode 1. You will hear how they sound, and you will notice that they have improved greatly from episode 1 to probably where you picked up to about episode 200. And one of the things that they've done is they've innovated, they've experimented, and they figured out what works to get to the point where they are putting out an exceptional product now and something that you love to listen to. So that's just something for us, right? We've experimented with different things, even right now, just being, again, we said we'd bear all. We're messing with the way that our show's open right now. Instead of, we're trying to improve the opening of our shows right now so that people know the value that they're going to get from the very beginning. And so we're trying that. We're going to see how it works. We're going to see how people respond. We're going to see if that increases how long people are listening to our podcasts and if it's engaging our audience. And, you know, we'll test that out. And if it works, great, we'll keep it. And then we'll just keep doing that to different parts of the show until we figure out the balance that really makes sense. So just want to really hit on that last point, Dave. Dude, I love how both of our don'ts and even our do's, but how they so beautifully were interwoven. We didn't even try that. We just nailed it.
No. Yeah, well, what it really helps me to see is, you know, we're really in tune with this journey, and man, I just greatly value how we've been able to both individually grow and all the stuff that's still in front of me. I was just sitting here thinking, like, man, I can't wait until episode 200. Like, we're going to be killing it by that point, you know. And yet at the same time, I don't want to miss out on all of what is going to happen internally for each of us and how we're going to grow between 6 and 200. And so, you know, I don't wish that away at all. I look forward to that day.
Right.
But I don't focus on that day. And between now and then, you know, man, this is going to be a wild journey. I will tell people I'm actually going to, next week, I'm getting on a plane. I'm heading to the East Coast. We might have a future People You Should Know podcast episode where Danny and I are in the same room.
Watch out, people. Look out.
That's going to be fire. So anyway, you know, I do agree with you, Danny. This has been really cool just to see how things have lined up for us. And I think it'd be really fun to end this episode just doing a quick review. You know, where have we been over these past 6 episodes? What are some impactful moments or highlights for you as we have moved through this process, as we've gotten started? What are the impactful moments over our first 6 episodes for you?
Yeah, I think it really starts. I want to start by saying this. Every single episode that we've done, every single conversation that we've had, I've said this to you, Dave. I've said this to my wife. I always tell her, when we finish having these episodes and having these conversations, I leave them feeling so energized. Like, you know, you think about like a football player before the big game, they're like ready to run through like a brick wall. Well, that's how I feel when I talk to people that have, you know, the same vibe as me. I'm ready. Like, let's do this. Let's go conquer whatever whatever. And it's awesome. I knew that from the very first episode with Aaron Anderson, when he talked about, specifically, the topic was on great habit formation. Mm-hmm. We asked him about something that his parents had instilled in him, and he said they instilled great habit formation. In that first episode, it became apparent to me that I was going to grow by doing a podcast, and it may be more beneficial for me to do this podcast than anybody that listens to it, because I literally took the conversation about great habit formation looked at my own life, went home and had a conversation with my wife about things we can do to benefit our children in when it comes to habit formation. And we began to do things in our own life when it comes to helping them to have like better discipline and great habit formation. And I was like, oh my goodness, like that one podcast, the first podcast episode impacted me as a business person, as a person in general. And then also took that and had a conversation with my wife, which is now impacting my children. So I promise I'm not trying to kind of be like over the top or make it seem like it has greater importance or just trying to make it sound super important. It had that much impact on our family.
Absolutely, man. And just to continue to give some props to Aaron, I continue, man, I feel like at least every 2 or 3 days, I remember him talking on that episode about how important it is to teach your heart what to love.
Yes.
That we learn what we love early,
Mm-hmm.
and how important it is to teach our hearts what to love. Not how to love. It was like, no, teach it what to love.
Right.
And that was one of his key points in creating great habits, is making sure that you love the right things, that you create affection
Mm-hmm.
for the things that truly matter in life. And man, that both inspires me and haunts me on a pretty regular basis.
Since we're right around Halloween, we might as well talk about the things that haunt us, right?
Just a little bit.
How about you,
Oh,
man?
man.
What's an episode for you that really stands out and has impacted you?
Yeah, I think that just one of our more recent episodes where we were speaking with Jason Epperson.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I really appreciate about his journey and the things that he was sharing is just this reality of recognizing the value. I love how Jason values people.
Yes.
He does it at a higher level than most people that I've met.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was so inspired by just the humble nature. I left that. I remember actually writing in my journal later that day, to be somebody who looks to give credit before seeking credit.
Right.
Just such a simple shift, right? But in those moments where I feel like the pinch inside, like I want credit for what's happening here,
Mm-hmm.
to in that moment choose instead to give credit and to elevate another person. He does that so effortlessly. When you go back
Mm-hmm.
and listen to that episode, he was constantly pointing to the greatness of other people around him and how surrounding himself with great people has given him some reward and to be an accomplished filmmaker. So I love that episode. I was pretty impacted by that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think the word that I'll use for it was I was really, like, even right now, I was very moved by that episode.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome because I got to talk to somebody from some place that I used to live, but then
Right.
to hear, I agree with you. I think the thing from that episode that stuck with me is, he said, just be kind. And in our world, it's not going to kill you to just be kind. You don't need to be right. You don't need to be wrong. You just need to be kind and allow grace to win the day was ultimately one of the things that I really felt like came out of that.
Yeah.
And in a world where there's so much polarization, I can absolutely see why people are so attracted to what Jason does for his clients. And after we released the episode, the way that people reacted on social media, just like he's one of the best, like not just because of what he does, but who he is. And
Just who he is, right?
I was just so moved because as people of faith, being a Christian, reading the Word of God, what a simple thing, right? First Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind. And when he just said that, it was just so simple, and yet we just struggle with it so bad, man.
True.
Yeah, man. So man, those were some of the impactful episodes. Every single one was really impactful in their own way. Like, we've talked several times about Josh Hall, what attracts your vibe, your vibe attracts your tribe. We've talked about the Belmont Bean. Obviously, my office is located right next to the Bean. I have a coffee right here that I ordered before we went on the air. And what I loved about that episode, and I think I want to talk about the importance of that episode just for a second, and what's impactful is Holly got burnt with her first business partner. And even we can talk about Gary a little bit, Gary Russell, two people that were partnered with people. It didn't work out, and they were just kind of left like, what do we do now?
Sure.
And both of them had to figure out how to move forward. And just, I think for those two episodes, the theme of perseverance, not giving up on people, and like being willing to lower down the guard to allow people to come in. And then what's resulted from that, obviously, for Holly, Jason and his wife were Dan's parents. She partnered with Jason. They've created an amazing hub here in York County where people can come and have a great cup of coffee, amazing conversation, and, no judgment on that. And then obviously Gary and Sammy partnered up, which I thought that was one of the funniest things ever, of how two people met. Like, Sammy just basically being like, that idea is dumb. And like, it just forged a friendship. But anyway, Gary partnering up with Sammy, he could have just stopped right there and been like, wow, this is too complicated. And now you guys have an amazing product in Axe Token. You guys have won the 2 Comma Club Award. And if he would have just stopped, right? If either one of them would have just stopped, look at the things that wouldn't have come into existence. It really speaks a lot to perseverance.
It really does. And so grateful for the examples that we have, just in everyday people, not necessarily. I mean, we all know like the epic stories of perseverance, but just to hear about everyday people choosing in the face of setback and adversity, continuing to press forward, and then to see the results. For Belmont Bean I mean, it's the last 2 years in a row.
Yep.
That they've been awarded the best coffee shop in the York area.
Yep.
For Axe Token to receive the award that we did, and everything that we're continuing to head towards, that is built upon the willingness for somebody to say, just because it hurt, just because it didn't work out the first time, doesn't mean I'm going to stop. Yeah, I totally vibe with that, man. It's been, it seems so crazy that we're like 6 episodes in, and it's already been this like incredible journey. Speaking to some truly great people, and we should just let people know too, man, we are not done talking to great people. There are so many people doing wonderful, amazing things, who have powerful stories of perseverance, powerful stories of success and excellence. And it doesn't have to mean that they're known on a national platform. We all know great people doing wonderful things in everyday life. And if you have somebody that that you think, boy, they would just be a great person to have on this episode or on this podcast, we would love for you to reach out to us. And make a recommendation. You can use any of our social media platforms to reach out and let us know your recommendations. And one of the things that you'll find, if you look at our most recent social posts, you'll see that Danny and I did a little Q&A.
That was fun.
It was fun, where we asked each other some questions, and they were just off the cuff questions. I found out Danny would love to ride an elephant.
Absolutely.
And I would love it if when people pass gas, it was visible. But
specifically orange. So
Orange
if you walk
cloud.
by,
Orange cloud.
an orange cloud, watch out.
Radioactive, man. Anyway, it was fun to do a little Q&A, but what we really want to do with that part of our podcast is we'd love for you to ask us some questions. It can be questions to us. It can be about our podcast. It can be about the businesses we're involved in. It's really pretty wide open. I mean, there's probably some questions if you were to ask. I remember once when I was a youth pastor, my wife and I did a ask anything about sex and marriage
Oh my gosh.
with a room full of 150 high schoolers. And we gave them a Google Voice number to text it in. And so we did it real time, right? So we're watching these questions come in, and some of those students, man, I don't get embarrassed easily at all, but man,
I feel embarrassed right now a little bit.
I was red in the face. I was like, I could not answer that question. So yeah, there might be a question that you ask and we just decide not to answer. But we really would love to hear from you. Dan, do you want to share anything more about that? I know this was really something, that was birthed out of an idea that you had. So I'd love for you to share what you'd love to see happen.
Yeah, honestly, I just want to be able to engage with people. I know there's a lot of people out there that have ideas, have questions. I just want this to be a safe space. If you have a business question, if you have a networking question, if you have a story, right? Something that's happened, failure, success, we want to hear about it from you because we want to be able to share in it. We want to be able to celebrate with you. At the end of the day, dude, I think we're just chronic encouragers here. We want to encourage you to continue to pursue the things that you're passionate about. We personally don't believe that's by accident. We believe that it was a design put in you, and that you should continue to pursue the things that are passionate and good, that will help benefit other people and serve other people. So, we also would love for you guys to get to know us, which I think is a great way. A lot of times we form opinions with very little information. And so I would love to have you ask a question, get to know us a little bit better. And I think that as you get to know us a little better, you'll realize we're just like you. And we're just on this journey. We would love for you to go on it with us. So that's really my heart behind it. We'll answer the funny off the wall question, but we'd also like to, answer, share your stories with people. We'd also like to, if you got a question about business, right? Which I think one thing that we could have done better, Dave, if I'm just being honest, is we could have kind of shared our credentials a little better early on in the podcast, right? Like, why would we trust these guys? But both of us have built successful entities. And we really just want to help encourage other people to do that as well. So ask us questions. If you're struggling with something in business, you're struggling with something in networking, we would love to be able to help you with that. So it has multiple purposes, but ultimately we just want to be available to you and to be able to serve you. That's really what it comes down to. So the last thing I want to say, just to close out this episode, about everything that we've said today, is that the one thing that I've learned, the one thing that I would conclude with, is that every single episode of the People You Should Know podcast to this point has done three things for me: has made me a better networker, has made me a better businessman, and overall has made me a better person. And so I would just conclude with saying this: a lot of people put a lot of stress on themselves to find their niche in a particular category. The saying is the riches are in the niches, and I'm sure people have heard that before. And a lot of times we put a lot of stress on ourselves to figure that out before we're actually ready to discover it. And so for this podcast, we always knew what the passion was and what we needed to figure out. And I want to just give you permission. Do figure this out. This is the final do. It's the ending do. is do allow your work and the things that you're passionate about to inform you about how you're going to help people. And so what I would say about this podcast is I do believe that we have found our niche and the thing that we're going to do for people, which is to help them become a better networker. We're going to help them become better in business. But all in all, we're just going to help them we just want people to become better people, to be human, to be perfectly imperfect, yet striving for perfection is the best way that I can put it in whatever you're doing. And so, I've loved every minute of doing this, Dave. I'm excited to continue to do this. I know I agree with you. We're only 6 episodes in, but man, it feels like when I was just watching this episode of The Office, when they think The Office is going to shut down and Kelly has Pam sign her company directory and Pam, she writes something like best wishes or whatever. And Kelly's really offended. And then she goes, P.S. what a long, strange road it has been. And all of a sudden Kelly perks up because that's what you write in the yearbook. In 6 episodes, plus a lot of planning beforehand, it has been a long, strange journey to get here.
It really has. And, when you take these moments to just pause and reflect, and, sidebar for everyone listening, please do that often, just
Yes.
to take a moment and stop and reflect. It really does help us to realize the significance of the journey that we've been on. It fills our hearts with gratitude just to know that we've been able to bring wonderful people before each of you who listen. We hope and pray that your lives have been as enriched as ours have.
Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to continue to grow with you and with this podcast as the journey continues. So thanks so much for being a listener. Thanks so much for your support of this project. We do hope that we can connect with you on a more personal level. So please ask those questions. But most of all, just thank you for being on this journey with us.
Thanks for joining us this week on the People You Should Know podcast. A very special thank you to today's guests for sharing their journey with us. If you have been listening to the podcast and have really been enjoying it, would you consider giving our show a 5-star rating or leaving a review? If you are on a platform that allows you to do that, leaving us a review will help other people to discover our content and could be the difference in them making the connections they need to unlock their greatest potential. More importantly, we want to hear from our fans and would love your feedback so we know how our show is inspiring you to chase your dreams. Also, if you are not getting email alerts when new episodes are released, be sure to sign up today. You can do that by going to heydouyouknow.com and putting your email right there in the episode alerts box. Once again, thank you for joining the People You Should Know podcast. We hope that today's episode has inspired you to connect with others and unlock your greatness.
Thanks for listening to the People You Should Know podcast. Do you know somebody amazing? Do you wish everyone knew about them? We can't wait to hear from you. Drop by one of our social pages and send us a message with your nominee to be a featured guest on People You Should Know.